Hey everybody, it has been so long since I've left a video. I really struggled whether or not I was going to do this one because I just wasn't sure if it was too vulnerable, if I was breaking anybody's privacy, and also I'm going to be talking about narcissistic tendencies. And narcissism is a word that's so much in our consciousness these days that I didn't want to add a fluffy piece to it. I didn't want this to be superficial because even though I have had, more than one therapist say that this relationship was full of narcissistic tendencies, I've had, his ex-girlfriend point to narcissistic tendencies. I've had, Matthew Hussey AI talk about how this relationship has narcissistic characteristics. I just hesitated over using that term. But at the same time, it's interesting that narcissism is coming up in our modern day consciousness. And I think that there is a reason for that. And I am grateful for having gone through a relationship that was very confusing. And 10 years ago, I wouldn't have had any names or any understanding of what had happened to me. Because at the end of the day, my overwhelming sense after leaving that relationship was, what was that? And reading about narcissism, reading Dr. Ramani's book, watching Matthew Hussey videos, there's other channels that I watched. I just was obsessed with learning about toxic relationships, trauma bonding, attachment styles, and even having had a foundation in attachment styles, I missed a lot of warning signs, and I also ignored a lot of red flags. And now my journey is to really figure out why I did that. And a lot of that comes back to bonding damage that I picked up along the way in this lifetime. I had initially been actually not even cluing in to narcissism because I didn't know much about it, and I thought that it was more of like a grandiose self-centeredness. But there was one day that post-breakup, I had just happened to click on a Dr. Ramani video, and I had to keep pausing it because it was overwhelming me with pain at somebody voicing the confusion and the traits that I experienced in that relationship. So let's dive in, I suppose. This is my video to kind of end all my dating videos. I'm a different person. I look back at old dating videos where I talk about, online dating and a bad date here, a bad date there. I'm not that person anymore. I can't even imagine going on those dates anymore. I just feel like I've woken up. It's a lot that I can't even articulate. It's just the old me is absolutely dead. I can't even imagine going on a date for fun anymore. I just feel like I've been through an experience that lifted the veil of humans, and I look at the world differently. And I'm not coming from a naive background. I'm coming from a big city. I'm coming from being in the cosmetics industry where there's a lot of people who wore masks and were duplicitous. I'm coming from a lot of bad dating experience, but this particular relationship threw me for a loop. And after really wrestling whether or not it was a good idea to post this, I decided to get it out of my system because I want to exercise this. I don't want to think about it anymore. I want to take the lessons and move on. And I kind of, I just never want to think about this person anymore. And I also want to help people recognize the signs of a toxic relationship. I personally was clouded with a lot of insecurity and not a lot of confidence in my standards. And I think that and I was very vulnerable because I was in a new city. And I think that was a perfect breeding ground to meet somebody who wore a very good mask. So I alluded to it in my last two videos, but I'm gonna can we just throw those in the garbage? I'm almost embarrassed by those videos. But anyways, who cares? It was what it was at the time. So I had only been in Austin for 3 weeks when I met this guy. Should I come up with a name? Call him X, after Elon Musk's kid. So I'd been in Austin for 3 weeks when I met X, and I was in a great headspace. I was confident, self-assured. I wasn't even really looking for anything. I was just looking to hang out because, to be honest, I saw things I didn't like in the messaging, namely that he didn't ask me any questions, even when I mentioned I'm from another country. He did not comment or inquire about that, and that's a big red flag for me. I just know that I'm not compatible with the person who just doesn't make me feel seen and doesn't ask questions and doesn't show the effort to get to know me. And he also seemed a little bit confused by abstract thinking, because he was saying how he found an episode of BoJack, confusing. So I was kind of like, oh boy, I'm an abstract thinker, so this is gonna be tough. But I agreed to meet up with him because I was new in Austin. I wanted to meet people and I wanted to go out. My friend's band was playing. I wanted to see them. I got the overall sense that he was so sweet. I didn't think that we were really connecting on an intellectual level. I found him a little bit confusing to talk to. I had asked him what it was like to live in Arkansas, and he just started talking about one restaurant. So I don't know, I couldn't really understand what that was about. I found him very unusual. I'd never met somebody like that, and he was mentioning he had ADHD, and I was like, well, maybe it's that. I can't even really describe it. Just felt like he never understood the context of what was going on. But we connected on a humor level and a physical level, and I just thought he was sweet. I really, really call your friends after the date. Oh my God, I met a nice guy. He is so sweet. He's a gentleman. I have not met this type of guy before. This is incredible. He wants to see me again. He's just sweet, cordial, kind, polite. I thought, okay, I definitely want to see this person again. There might not be the intellectual connection there, but I just had this idea that men in the South were gentlemen. So I think I've really, lesson number one, don't fill in the blanks, girl. Don't overly romanticize things. Be wide awake and see what's going on. So I really did get swept away in Austin dates, going to places that seemed magical to me because I'd never been to Texas. I'd never been to the really unique country-ish places that Austin had, and I felt swept away. I felt, again, like there might be a bit of a disconnect, but he just seems so eager to see me and so nice. And then I would say over the next coming weeks, it's not like I noticed red flags early. It's that I didn't feel good. And I was telling my friend about him, and she was like, that is not the guy for you. That is not how you want to be treated. And it was things that I couldn't quite place. I just didn't find him that empathetic. If I had mentioned something kind of sad going on, he just wasn't a very comforting, empathetic person. I found the way that he planned things really weird because they were always last minute. And even if he dodged out of the plans, because he wouldn't let me know until the last minute, till it was far too late for me to figure out plans with somebody else. I got bad vibes. I got bad vibes that the communication was kind of inconsistent and one-sided. And even though he was messaging me daily and he wanted to see me more quite, like, for the beginning of a relationship, quite often, which in itself is kind of a red flag. Because I really, really will go slow and really get to know the person, because my sense of trust is completely destroyed, like discombobulated after this relationship. The first time that I went to his place and we were watching a movie together, he mentioned kind of like he started apologizing for stuff that didn't make any sense to me. He was apologizing for taking so long to find the show that we were going to watch. And it, like, the impression I really got was that he has been hurt by women, he's been wounded, maybe he's been with somebody that was unreasonable. And hey, I've been on dates where the guy's like, my ex-wife was psycho, and I'm like, okay, peace out. But this guy X did not come out and say my ex was psycho. It was, I am so sorry, I'm taking so long to find this show. And I'm like, why would I care? And he's like, well, I've dated people in the past who got really angry at that. So it definitely had a victim vibe that I fell for. And I thought at the time, oh my God, this poor guy. Like, I'm pretty chill, so, you know, this is going to be good for him. Never once thinking that it could be anything other than he's been in relationships with people that had, like, tendencies to get irritated by things that are not a big deal and make him feel bad. It didn't have the vibes of my ex is psycho. Over time it did. Like, when we were 6-7 months into the relationship, I'm like, okay, I'm tired of hearing about my ex this and my ex that. And it was, again, it was stuff that didn't make sense. Like, sorry, I have to pause the movie to go to the bathroom. My ex used to get mad. And it was like this like child energy of like, mommy's gonna get mad at me. And there was a couple things I didn't understand. Is no one would care about that stuff. No one would complain about that, like, at all. And then when he was saying they were kind of teasing him, I thought, that's funny though, you know, like his ex would say something like, oh, maybe I can do my taxes while you pause the movie and go to the bathroom. Like, and I couldn't understand, because I'm like, those jokes aren't hurtful. And he seems to be just so hurt by this whole situation. I'm confused. Like, is he a pushover? Like, I couldn't make sense of that. I couldn't picture somebody actually being mad about these things. And I also didn't know why he was hanging on to it, because at that point it's like, you've been dating me for 6 months. Like, drop it. Like how long do you have to be the victim? I'm not like that. You've brought these things up to a degree that's like making me uncomfortable, because it's a lot. It's a lot. It's starting to spell to me that you have baggage, especially because there was other things, like he just wouldn't get rid of stuff from his previous relationships. He wouldn't address it when I was just like, hey, it kind of bothers me that you still have like letters, gifts, all this stuff in your bedroom, when I've done all the work to clear the energy of my exes. He wouldn't even talk about it. He'd get mad, he wouldn't talk about it. And nothing would ever get solved. So these are things that were red flags. And then what seemed like innocent complaining about his exes started to get awful. Like, he would mention that he had an ex with disordered eating, and she would get mad if he offered her something. And this is, again, coming on the heels of him being like, hey, did you want me to grab you a popsicle or whatever? And I'm like, no, I'm good. And then he'd launch into like, well, my ex had disordered eating and da-da-da-da. And this is when I realized, your exes sound normal to me. If somebody has disordered eating and they're setting a boundary with you, it's because it's important for their lifestyle, their recovery. Now you've lost me. Before, you had me at, oh, you poor put upon man with ex-girlfriends that had tempers or unrealistic expectations or got annoyed easily. Now you've lost me. Now I'm starting to wonder what the actual story is, because you complain about your exes so much and I literally never do, because I think it's weird. I have done so much work on clearing the energy of the past. I'm ready for a relationship. I'm not wanting somebody to feel like they're in the shadow of one of my exes. And I also felt uncomfortable because I felt like the things that you're apologizing to me for are things that would bother your exes, that do not bother me. So I felt invisible. Do you not see what bothers me? Because when something does bother me, you shut down. You won't discuss it. You sometimes will not talk to me for days. You will get defensive. It was so odd. Like, I just started to wonder, does this guy need to be programmed into behavior? Like, he doesn't seem to pick up on behavior. And why are you talking about your history of what other people preferred when I don't feel like you're trying to get to know me at all? At all. I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard. I feel when I bring stuff up, you either like patronize me and say things like, oh, I want to know your needs, darling. Let's be good to each other, darling. But you don't actually address them at a deep level. Or you get really strange and really angry and shut down and will not discuss it. And when I circle back to have conflict resolution, I got nothing. Like, it wouldn't be until I met up with him that he'd be like, oh my God, I hate fighting. Like, darling, look, let's be good to each other. I love you so much. I need you. Please don't leave me. You're family. And it was really confusing for me, because why don't we just talk about stuff? I don't get it. It's hard to tell this story, I guess, without it being all over the place too. And a lot of it kind of sounds like normal kind of relationship weirdness. And I don't know how to highlight that this went beyond that. I don't know how to highlight how I never felt emotionally safe, how I always felt anxious, how I always felt weird, how his eyes just had this like uncanny quality where it never felt like he was looking at me, how I never felt seen, I didn't feel heard, but yet he acted as if I was the greatest thing he'd ever had. Like, when my friend met him, my friend was like, wow, that guy seems so barely clinging on, like he cannot lose you, and that this was causing him anxiety. And I'm like, yeah, that's the vibe I get. And that's what he says. And he wants to see me all the time. And at the beginning, he was planning really fun dates. I didn't feel cared for. I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel like he was ever trying to get to know me as a unique individual. I felt like I had to start censoring myself. I just had this sense of like what would bother him. And I found that I was censoring myself. I just thought, oh, I'm not going to tell him about my day because he's not going to show that much interest. Or I'm not going to bring up something that hurts me because he's going to get defensive. I remember one time, like, I had a friendship that was crumbling, and it was very sad. It was very hurtful. And I started talking about it with him, and he literally said nothing. And his brother jumped in and was like, oh, I'm sorry. And, started engaging with me, and he said nothing. And I was just so hurt. But it never felt like a normal relationship where I could kind of poke the person and be like, hey, are you listening? Like, this is important to me. This is something that's happening in my life. It's really painful. I didn't feel like I could do that. I don't know. I don't know if it was just because I was so vulnerable and scared in Austin that I just was clinging to this, but I honestly thought he can't be like this because he is this, aw shucks, really nice guy. He can't be this other person. And it was such a difference. The first time that we got into a little bit of, it wasn't even a fight. It was just like, I was crawling out of my skin. I couldn't handle the feeling of never being asked how my day was, never being engaged in conversation, listening to him go on and on and on, never have depth. And never feeling emotionally safe and not knowing why. And I kept making excuses. I kept thinking, I'm too anxious. I expect too much. Guys are a little bit dumb. This is how it is. But my body was like, I can't handle this. And I remember one night, I just started to feel anxiety, and he did not comfort me in any, he didn't comfort me. He kind of maybe sort of half attempts, but not really. And I had to go. That's my trigger response, is flight. I had to go. And he shut down. He absolutely shut down. I was confused because he had gone on about how all his exes, not all his exes, but his last ex or something like that, and him would fight until 2 a.m. and he wasn't going to do that. And I wasn't asking for a fight till 2 a.m. I was asking for a 10-minute discussion. I couldn't understand why he shut down. And I remember saying to him, like, I'm feeling like I'm living in the shadow of your exes. Like, I'm feeling like I can't bring anything up because you are so averse to friction. And he wouldn't respond. He just kept saying, I gotta go to sleep. And so I asked him to drive me home, and he didn't talk the whole way. And I tried to bring it up again. I'm like, whatever it was, I tried to bring up, like, because I was feeling so confused at how he was acting like I'm the best thing that's ever happened to him. And now all of a sudden he looked like a different person. He was talking like a different person. He was acting like a different person. He was impenetrable. He didn't see it. It was awful. And I don't know. It's so difficult for me to describe these things and make it seem like it's different from relationships I've had in the past where we fought, but I don't know. It just felt like a mask came down. And then he would come back. And he would blame it on, oh, it was that movie. Because we watched a sad movie, that's why you were sad. And, I gotta cut you some slack. Oh, it's because you're on on antibiotics that you're acting like this. Like, I'm like, all right, is this guy gaslighting me? I've never had a boyfriend who blamed it on a movie or antibiotics. I've never had that. I've never had somebody gaslight me, to be quite honest. I don't know. It's like the empathy wasn't there. It's like I just felt so unbelievably alone and unheard and unseen, and I couldn't get it because it was so inconsistent. The apologies about stuff I didn't care about, but then when I would care about something, he wouldn't handle it. The inconsistent behavior. He could be so unbelievably thoughtful and detailed about his thoughtfulness, like calling to say I'm running 10 minutes late and I'm so sorry. I didn't ask for that. I don't care. Like, I know you're busy doing this thing. I didn't expect you to be right on the dot. And you can shoot a text, like that's really thoughtful, but I couldn't figure it out. Why can't he be like that all the time? Because then there was other times where I would, things would start to get heat up and I would call him to clear it up and he wouldn't answer the phone, and then he would text me and say, stop calling me, I'm at work. Oh my God. It was just, it messed with my mind, because why could he be so thoughtful about some things and then scream at me about others? One example I have is that the Thursday night, he's like, what are you doing Friday? And I'm like, I don't have plans. But he didn't say, let's hang out, do you want to do this? I'll call you at this time. Nothing. So I'm at work. It's like 5:00. Haven't heard from him. My work colleague messages and says I have tickets to a South by comedy show. Great. So I text X and I'm like, my friend wants to go to this comedy thing. Like, I know that you had mentioned maybe hanging out. I'm not sure if you still planned on that, but if you did, do you want to hang out after? He just writes back, what time is the comedy show? I'm like, 7:30. And then he starts talking about other stuff. He never really answers my question. So I write to him again, like maybe 2 hours later. I'm like, did you want to hang out after? I never heard back. Still doesn't answer the question. Like, starts talking about other things, starts talking about like his coworkers and how they're out for drinks. And it ruined my night. This is something that makes me anxious. I'm not sure why he can't answer my question. It's a simple question so that I can know what's going on. Should I go home after? Should I go for a drink with my friend? Am I meeting you? Like, what is happening? Why is he texting me all night and he can't answer this question? And then around 9:30, he's like warm again. Hey, do you want me to do you want to hang out? I'd love to pick you up. Like, super warm, super accommodating, super agreeable. So when he picks me up, I'm like, hey, like, I was trying to, ask you a question. You never answered it. And he instantly like snapped at me. He's like, was I out with my work friends? I'm like, yeah, I don't have time. I'm out with my work friends. I don't have time to answer that question. And I, might have forgotten about it or whatever. And it was moments like that where I'm like, no, this is totally reasonable. Like, you didn't book Friday plans with me. You weren't clear when I was trying to make plans with you. When I asked you again, you still didn't answer. Now you're throwing, like, it was just things like that were odd, and they scared me, and they left me with a sense of anxiety. Like, I can never really rely on this guy. He's so inconsistent. One day he is agreeable and apologetic and thoughtful, and the next day he is angry and gaslighty. I started to read books because I had thought to a degree that this stuff is my fault, that I'm the one that's anxious. I have anxious attachment. I did display protest behaviors. And at first, when I communicated my boundaries around planning, and he broke them. And when I communicated my boundaries around communication, and he broke them, I did exhibit protest behavior. Like, I did get upset and aggressively state my boundaries, kind of in a way where I said, you have repeatedly broken this boundary that I have set around time and planning and canceling plans and communicating. You've broken it time and time again, and I've been really clear about what I'm looking for and what makes me anxious and what makes it hard for me to schedule my life and whatnot. And we've had several conversations about it, and you have now broken it again. And so please only contact me if, you know, you're on the same page. Like, I was fed up. I was fed up with I felt disrespected. Even like, hey, whatever. Like, even if it's like nobody's fault, I have set a standard that you have said, oh, I want to meet that. I want to meet your needs. I want to know your boundaries. And then you've broken it. And time and time again. And I can't believe that I kind of allowed somebody who kept breaking my boundaries to do that. But I've never had confidence in my boundaries. I've always thought that you have to be a chill girl, and I expect too much, and I'm too anxious, and I'm unrealistic. So that was sort of my driving force behind all of this. So I was abandoning myself. I wasn't honoring or respecting myself. I was abandoning myself because that's the messaging I've internalized all these years. So it really motivated me to start doing the work. I started reading like Nicole LaPera. I went back to Attached. I was reading a book called Talk to Me. What was it? Like Talk to Me Like I'm Somebody You Love, which had all these shortcuts to help with conflict. And X would take an interest. Like, he saw all my conflict resolution sheet printouts at my apartment. He's like, what are these? I'm like, oh, I just, I thought I would do a new approach to when things get heated with us. These one sentence things help to diffuse and help to make the person feel safe. And the whole time I'm communicating, I have a tendency to shut down, or I have a tendency to get anxious. So these are sort of like things I'm going to say so that I don't disappear. Because I was putting like the lion's share of blame on myself. Like, I was kind of like, oh, I'm not communicating well enough. I'm getting triggered and not handling it well. And he seemed like he would say he's interested. Oh, yeah, I'm going to do that attachment quiz. Or, oh, yeah, this is great. I'm going to read. He would never incorporate anything ever, 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 ever. Ever, ever, ever. And he had all the books. He had a bunch of books because his ex was a therapist. And it turns out she did the same thing, and he never listened to her either. So it was so odd to me, because I just thought, this guy is not quite a match for me. He seems way more into me than I am into him. Yet somehow I'm doing all the work. And I got this gnawing sense of abandonment. Like, if I don't do all the work, it's not going to get better. And I couldn't even understand, because I'm like, but you're not even a match to this guy anyways. And why do you have this sense that he's going to leave? And he was never committed to the relationship, in the sense of, like, to me, true intimacy is dealing with conflict. It's not running away from it. It's seeing the person, it's asking the questions, it's learning about them. And all of this I would bring up to him, and I don't even know if he was listening. And over the months, it was just like, why am I doing all the work? Why am I like, even now when we have conflict and I'm saying the things that I literally, like, when I start to trigger and spiral, I am gonna say this as a indicator that this is where I'm going, so that we can fix it together. And he would gaslight me. I would say something that, like, hey, I'm starting to withdraw from the conversation. He would ignore it. And then when I'd be like, hey, I'm giving you the warning, like, I'm giving you the kind of, like, can we talk on the phone? Like, can we resolve this conflict? He would gaslight me and say that I didn't say that. Or he had already answered my question. It was odd. And it was starting to make me feel insane. Like, it was filling me with fear. And I still thought, is it me? Like, what do I need to say to bring back that really sweet guy that loves me? But it's like, but he doesn't love you, because he's never willing to pick up the phone. When it's stuff that bothers you, when it's stuff that bothers me, When it's things that I bring up, he's never willing to talk to you on the phone. He's never willing to meet up with you and talk about it. He's never willing to hear you out. He ignores you. He gaslights you. He changes the topic. He pretends he doesn't hear it. He like disappears. He makes it about something else. Like all of a sudden he'll be like, so do you not want to hang out anymore? But then there's this whole other side where he is overly apologetic about stuff that you've never cared about, overly thoughtful about stuff that you've never said you need. It was such a mind, like, and I mean, I could go on and on and on. I could go on and on and on. I don't know what that was. I am starting to ramble, so I want to maybe make this a little bit more concise. So I'm reading these books, I'm doing the work, and I'm gaining confidence. I'm gaining clarity because I'm reading about needs and communication and conflict and attachment. And I'm gaining clarity, and I'm incorporating healthy communication into the relationship. And it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. I'm still getting stonewalled, gaslit. He gets mad. He ignores me. He twists my words. So that's when I just started checking out. My body just started shutting down. I was physically checking out. I wasn't he wanted to hang out more, but he wasn't prioritizing me either. It's hard to explain. He also never wanted to do things I wanted to do. I'm new in Austin. I want to go see the bats. I want to go to the Broken Spoke. I want to go on hikes. He would just say nothing, and we'd do what he wanted to do. And I would bring it up, and he would listen. And then we'd do what he wanted to do. And it was really annoying because it's like, I am a very agreeable person. Like, I actually just don't, like, I'm new here, so I'm happy to just go anywhere because it's going to be something brand new for me. So I was getting really irritated because it's like, not only am I high on agreeability, but I'm extra agreeable because I'm new to the city. And even still, you're not wanting to do any of the things I want to do. Like, it felt like I was a little girl again, and I was asking my dad to care, to be interested, and he wasn't. And yeah, it was just even down to like restaurant choices. Like, I don't know, I couldn't understand why somebody would be that controlling and wouldn't want to do the thing. Like I don't know, I'm used to most guys who are like, oh, that's awesome that you're speaking up and that's something you want to do because that's something I want to show you. And now that, you know, I know you're interested in that, wouldn't it be fun to do this together? So it was really weird. He did a lot of like kind of future faking too, like, oh, maybe we'll move to New Mexico together. There's one time I saw a balloon arch and I'm like, that's what I want at my wedding. And he's like, well, I will have to buy a balloon arch then. So it was like, what? Like, this is just odd. This whole dynamic is odd. Even like planning with little things, like my pot was rusted and he's like, oh, I have a pot in storage, I'll give it to you. I'm like, okay, like, that's cool. And then like a week goes by, I'm like, hey, like, that pot. And he's like, oh yeah, I gotta go to my storage under the house or whatever. I'm like, okay, because I like just let me know, because I can buy one, because it's literally the only pot I own and it's rusted and it's what I use to make coffee. Like, I need one stat. So like, just kind of like let me know what's going on. Another like a week or so passes and I'm like, hey, like, did you get a chance? And then all of a sudden he's mad. Elizabeth, I don't have time to go into my house, into my storage where it's dangerous for me, and get this pot for you. And it's like, what? Like, I don't deserve to be talked to like that. Also, this pot thing was your idea. And also, I just need clarification. I ended up just going and buying a pot myself. Things like that. It's so odd. It's so odd. I don't understand the anger. But I really started to see him as somebody who just, his words never matched his actions. Even in his own life, oh, I gotta work out more. I gotta start biking. He did zero working out. He didn't really take care of himself. But if you said that, he'd be, if you're kind of like, oh, like, I want to eat healthier, he'd be like, I eat healthy. Meanwhile, it's like you're putting salt on your tacos, but whatever. So I did see somebody who wasn't showing up for themselves in their own life. And I also saw really poor. So yeah, why would he show up for me? Whereas like my philosophy is like integrity. If I say I'm going to do something, I am gonna do it. And I'm not going to get mad at you because I didn't do it. Like, it was mental. The way he treated his dog really bothered me. I don't even want to talk about that on this video. I don't even want to go there. I didn't like it. And I'm not trying to air out like grievances. I just, again, like, my honest intention is for people struggling in relationships that are toxic. These are the things I noticed in my toxic relationship. Whether he was a narcissist, whether it was avoidant attachment, who cares? There's consistencies and inconsistencies with all that. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I've really realized the label does not matter. Also, even overly focusing on them doesn't matter. What matters is that my nervous system is regulated. I'm in touch with my intuition. I know my standards. I know my worth. I know my boundaries, and I communicate them well. And if that doesn't end up in a conversation that is helpful and it shows growth in the dynamic, I'm out. So it's funny, like, I can point to all these things, but at the end of the day, I don't actually care what he did. What I'm interested in is, how do I be a good partner? How do I grow from this? And what are my standards and what are my values? Because I have locked those in more than I ever have in my entire life. So I really don't want this video to come off as me trashing somebody. I just know that when I'm watching videos, I'm kind of like, but what happened? Give me specific examples. What did they say? What did they do? What happened? Because things are not always going to be neat and clean and tidy like they are in books, where it's a list of behaviors. This was all over the place. It was very confusing. Yeah, I will say, I just felt like I was with somebody who had a lack of consciousness, like this complete unawareness of their actions, their impact from those actions. This is somebody who did not acknowledge emotions. They did not have accountability. And there seemed to be a lack of empathy, like a lack of empathy. I never felt understood. It was a very strange, surreal experience. But then they could show, at times, unbelievable empathy and consideration. And I wondered if their empathy was conditioned into them. I had all these questions. I'll never get answers for them. I didn't understand the dynamic. At times, I thought X was this unbelievably perceptive, empathetic person that was just holding back, because the times that I could see his empathy, which was performed or genuine, I will never know, it blew me away. It was so empathetic. It was so caring. And I really, really honestly stuck around for those juicy moments, and I just always felt like I was on the precipice of him getting it and being like that permanently. And like, but it wasn't because it ended badly. And just to move this forward, because I am rambling, I started to break down. My body was keeping the score the whole time. My body was freaking out. I couldn't handle the anxiety. And I started to shut down. And I just felt sad. And it was one more day of not being prioritized. It was one more day of being neglected. It was one more day of messages being all about him and me finding myself trying to fit into his frame, sending him stuff that he would like, censoring myself, losing myself, not sure why I was doing this. It was one more insensitive comment about mental health. It was, not hugging me when I was sad. It was making a comment about weight gain when I was insecure about something. It was just one more of this and that, and I just broke. I broke and I cried, and he didn't comfort me. And I said, you say you love me. You say you love me so much. You say I'm family. And you can't even comfort me when I am sad. I feel like I've been strung along. You can't do this to people. You can't tell them one thing and not deliver. It's so hurtful. And he just shut down, and he went on his trip without resolving things with me. And I got a pat. Sorry we fought. Didn't check in. I mentioned, I ended up going to the doctor. I ended up getting Zoloft and Ativan. I got a therapist. And he was just like, I hope that works for you. Didn't check in on me, sent me selfies, came back. We broke up. He tried his hardest. I tried my hardest. I mean, at the end of the day, I had done so much reading, so much growth, started therapy. And my bottom line when we broke up was like, I want a healthy relationship. I'm not perfect. I don't expect somebody to be perfect. I have a lot of love to give. I want a good, healthy relationship, and it requires work. And he just was like, me, can't do it. Don't want this, but can't do it. And that was it. And then he came back into my life 3 weeks later, starts messaging me, the dog misses you, you're the best, I miss you. And when I requested, can, I value our connection, I'm constructing these messages with Matthew Hussey AI. If anybody knows Matthew Hussey, the world's #1 dating coach, I'm constructing AI messages to him. So I'm saying, I really value our connection. I love that we're back in touch, but I have unresolved feelings. I need to communicate before I move forward. He shuts down. He's disengaged in the conversation. He gets mad at me. And then it's clear. It's clear. It's so clear. It's so clear. The veil on my intuition is lifted. I have nothing else to lose. I know for certain I have done everything I could. I have done my best. At this point, I'd done like all of Matthew Hussey's courses basically on, Save for Two, and I'm using Matthew Hussey AI to construct this message, and I'm still met with his same tactics. And then I knew for sure I'm not putting up with anything else. And because I'm a crazy Scorpio, I reached out to his ex-girlfriend, and that's when I learned that he lied. All those times he was like, oh, my ex. That's not what happened. It'd be something that was the complete reverse. Like, he'd be like, oh, my ex always wanted to go to expensive places, and I'm glad you don't. And it turns out that ex paid. Oh, I'm so glad you don't drink because my ex drank too much. Turns out that he was an alcoholic in the relationship. She had receipts. He had been in touch with her the whole time, lied to me about that, lied to me about so many stories. One of his friends he had dated for 6 years didn't tell me that. He told me they dated. He made it seem like it was super casual. Didn't know they lived together and dated for 6 years. It was a very odd feeling because I really had trusted him in some areas that he had lied about. You know, to go on and trash an ex and to complain, but then to be in touch with them and to lie to me about it. He never told her about me. He never told me that he was in contact with her. That is absolutely unacceptable behavior to me, to have you create the reality you want me to see through your lies. I don't know. It made me sick. Like, I remember having that conversation with her on the phone, and I was meeting up with a friend at a campus bar, and I had to go because I thought I was going to puke. I just had given my heart and my soul and my love to somebody who I have story after story of how they didn't treat me well. And then it turns out it was all a lie. I remember watching a video where the guy said, if your current boyfriend is texting an ex, he's not over her, and he will dump you. If there's a chance with her to get back with her, he'll dump you immediately. And I had a hard time coming to grips with that reality because he really made it seem, with his words and stuff, like, you're the most beautiful person I've been with. I've never been this attracted to somebody. I've never, like, all that garbage. I can't lose you. I need you. Your family. I love you so much. It's just all garbage. It's all garbage. It's undercut my ability to trust. And it's making, I've been on and I'm continuing on a long journey of, like, why do I have this energy inside of me that is drawn to this? That he was a mirror. He was a mirror and brought up every unhealed wound. And I might make a video just sort of like the positive side of all this, because what I've learned is absolutely soul evolving. Yeah. And I mean, I will say, just finally, is he did say that he didn't know himself and he's very fragile. And I think those are two honest things that really point to something deep going on and why all this, a possible reason for all this behavior. So I just, I'm going to limit my empathy and I'm going to watch out for things like that, because my empathy when somebody says they don't know who they are and they're fragile is to be like, oh, but those are very dangerous words. I've read much about toxic relationships, and something that keeps coming up is this deep fragility, deep insecurity, and somebody who doesn't know themselves. Those are big ones. Anyways, that's my final thoughts. Thanks for listening to this super long video. I really hope it's out of my system. And if you're going through that, I am praying for you, because I literally, like, when I think about him, I say a prayer for all women who are in toxic relationships to feel grace, feel comfort, get out of it, feel strong, whatever they need. So I am thinking about you and sending you lots of love and lots of prayers, and peace, love, and namaste.